the George Street Fest on Main will have their inaugural event downtown on June 5th that evening, and from 6 to 10 p.m. Should be a fantastic event. It'll be on the first Friday of every month. This is their first year doing this. We're really excited to be a part of that. I just went down and did a little promo shot that you'll start seeing around with Paul and Grady from St. George News. Funny guys. Anyway, we'll enjoy being there, and I'm sure that since they checked dance on the box, there will be dancing allowed. Okay, and that's all legal. Everything's good, and right, Betty. Betty's a dancer, and I'm sure that Betty and all the other city council will be there to, do a little dancing. There's a venue for that, so we'll enjoy that. So be there and spread the word, will you? June 5th will be the first one of these George Street Fests. All kinds of fun stuff, entertainment, shops, food, music, and dancing. Okay, so now we have an exciting thing here. Whoever is here that would like to come up from the Learning Center for Families, any and all of you, come up, and if there's a spokesperson that wants to speak at the microphone, please tell us what you're here to do.
Okay. So you guys can hold the check over there if you want.
Put your website up for you.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Just kind of scroll.
That's fantastic.
There's quite a bunch of you here. That's good.
We're a loyal group. Okay, so you guys will hold that up. We're the board. There's three of us up here, and so I'm Shirley Draper. It's Ellen Arch and Jake Graff. That's part of the board anyway. So on behalf of the Board of Directors for the Learning Center for Families, we are donating this check to sponsor the Sensory Garden portion of the All Abilities Park. Now, at this point, I'd like to invite Debbie Justice, our Executive Director, to come up here and join us.
Please.
Please. What Debbie doesn't know is that we have worked with the Leisure Services Department, and they've agreed to allow us to name the Sensory Garden the Debbie Justice Sensory Garden.
Am I being too sensitive?
What'd she say, Shirley?
Is she being too sensitive? We are so excited to name this after Debbie because she's retiring this year after 23 years of service to at least 13,000 families in this area. Now, the impact she's had on our community can't even begin to be quantified, but the long-term ripples will be felt as the first graduates of her program are just now becoming parents themselves. So with the creation of the Sensory Garden, we want to honor her work and honor the families that we serve. And we are so pleased to be part of the city's effort to create an inclusive space for all of our citizens, regardless of their ability. So thank you so much for allowing us to participate in this important project.
Thank you.
We'd like everyone from TLC to come up and get a picture with us. We'll give it to the mayor.
This one?
Well, it's made out of rubber, so I wouldn't.
All right. Gonna bounce a little bit.
In the back.
so that no one has to look at me. That is great. You know, when you think about that, Debbie and your board and your employees, you know, that's a generation, Debbie, generation of contribution. And I remember, and I've said this before, I remember going to see you at your first site over there, just off of Sunset, and you just do remarkable things. And now being off of Tonnequint, you know, much different facility, isn't it? But thank you for your leadership, and most importantly, your service, Debbie. Maybe once in a while. You'll have time now, Debbie. Thank you for that wonderful donation. And this is a great community, you know. We just find ways to make things happen. And I don't know where this puts the total, but I know it's over a couple $100,000, isn't it, Gary? Maybe 240 or
It's close to 300 now.
closer to 300. So we have a very generous community. Thank you. And I might just, I have to mention that the Learning Center was recognized at a luncheon up in Salt Lake just this week, and for their contributions to the community statewide. So I happened to be there for that. So thanks and congratulations for that as well. Thanks. Yes.
Debbie was also recently announced that she was the First League's first champion of the year as well.
Awesome. And it was her birthday this week. Huh? I heard it was. All right. Well, you can have the, you know, wait a minute. You can have this. Oh, Gil's got M&Ms. No birthday cake, but.
It was my birthday.
Oh, was it yours? Okay. All right. Gil almost threw them. All right. What an exciting thing. Thank you all. I think we're ready. Unless I'm missing anything. Okay. Gary, ready to start the official agenda.
All right, Mayor and Council, the first item is the financial report for April 2015. I think that you've had a copy of that in your packet. I think that our revenues in the general fund are about a little over 80%. It should be about 83 at this point. Most of the difference there is we haven't made their transfers in yet. And I think our expenditures are somewhere around 71%, so we're still in pretty good shape. The sales tax is still hovering around 6% increase. So overall, I think we're doing very well this year. So,
Council, any questions? We always have a great administrative director's comments at the first. We appreciate those. It helps summarize it. But any questions?
I'd just like to say thanks to the people who do such a fabulous job in helping us all know where we stand financially and being so financially fit. I think that's great. And I'd like to move that we approve our financial report for April 2015.
Second.
Motion by Betty and a second by Gil. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
next item are bid openings. The first item is the agreement with Rosenberg and Associates for the construction management services on the erosion protection project. As I think you recall, that we're doing a project down there next to the Dixie Center for the property the city owns to protect our roadways and our sewer and water lines. And as part of that erosion protection, we'll be bringing to you a project. We've finally got approval through the environmental groups to start that. Unfortunately, we can't start until fall on some of it in the river area, but in order to do that, we'd like to recommend that construction management services be with Rosenberg. They've been the engineer on the project so far, so in order to make sure it's put in correctly.
Any questions, council?
Mayor, I move that we approve Rosenberg Associates for the construction management services on the Dixie Center Erosion Protection Project, otherwise known as the DCEPP. I mean, we got to have all these in
That's the
acronyms,
familiar,
right?
yeah, that's the familiar.
Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
For 30,125.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Gil and a second by Joe. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That'll be good to get that done.
The next item is a bid opening or a bid award for the pickleball. We'd like to suggest that we table that. We've had some major errors with that project and found out we don't have enough money to fund it, so we'd like to delay that, Mayor.
Laugh a minute.
He's just wanting to see.
Just because he can't play. Just because he can't play.
All right, I can play. I'm pretty good, by the way.
Yeah,
I can beat anybody on the council here.
there
I
you
know
go.
that
I'll
for
bet he
sure.
could too.
Any-
Sign him up, you guys.
I
Sign him
think
up.
that's a challenge. I'll take that.
Probably anybody in the audience here, too. so. I've only played once. Okay. Connie, go ahead and give us the details on that. I think the low bid was PCI.
Right, it's Progressive Contracting, and it is for the Little Valley Pickleball Phase 4. The cost was, that they submitted was $962,215.73. And it is under budget of what we estimated it'd be at, so.
And it's not all pickleball courts as well. I think there's some other stuff there. that-
Right, there's construction
And
documents.
then there's some
there's-
restroom addition or some
Right,
sort
44
of.
parking spaces, landscaping, irrigation, all that. So it's not
Okay.
just the pickleball courts. It's all that surrounds it, so.
It's part of the master plan that
Right.
we've done for that Little Valley area. So some of the parking can be used also for future soccer fields and that as well.
Connie,
Yes.
the public audio system, is that for tournaments and that sort of coordination that is required when you have so many courts and so many people as far as calling up who's playing on what court, things like that?
This is in relation to what was it?
The item,
PA.
the PA system.
PA system.
Oh, yes.
We have Millie coming up and answer
Good.
any
It's-
details that
Good.
you possibly have, any questions on it, so.
And I'm wondering, along with that, Millie, has that been coordinated with the soup group, some of those folks, so that it works for them and us?
Yes.
Okay. Is that right, Bob? Yes, indeed. Okay, good. Good.
I have a question on the time frame. Will there be a penalty on that if it's not met?
Yes,
Is
We
that
have-
part of the contract?
it is.
Thank you.
When is it to be finished?
It is to be finished
Before the senior games.
before the senior games,
I see that
before
on
the
there.
fall brawl.
The fall.
Oh,
ball.
that's even better, huh? Okay. Good question, Joe, thanks.
Does include lights?
Yes. Did you want to see a picture?
If you got a picture,
Yeah.
show a pretty picture is always good.
Well, pretty.
You didn't color it?
I hope so. Can I scoot this up? Here we go. That's on the screen. Oh, there it is. There it went.
Nice. They're improving the front of the roadway today
So,
on the corner.
it includes the 12 courts, doubling the size of the restroom, and the parking along Horseman's Park Road. And the start of the trail at the very top.
Very nice.
And it includes lights, shade. Bleachers are they are a separate item that the city will purchase on its own.
Are we bringing, is the grade going to be brought down?
Yes.
As we
there's
discussed, to match.
Significant portion of the contract is grading.
75,000.
So there'll be a lot of earthwork before they get started, so.
Okay. Any other questions, council?
Maybe not a question, Mayor, but something of note. The city is providing from our tree farm 19 trees. The contractor is installing them, but it still is a total savings of about $4,000 from having purchased them and then having someone install them. So obviously that could go to something else, but
Right.
it does come from the city's own tree farm, and it's a mature tree, acclimated, and will be tree spaded and put in. So I think that's it's an additional thing that the public should know where the savings come from having a tree farm.
Anything else, council? Or
I
anything
just
else?
appreciate the the enthusiasm of the pickleball player supporters. I think they're fabulous.
Yes, they are. And when you go out to see some of their tournaments, I went out there for a few hours. When was that? A month ago or so? And it was just packed and amazing and fun to play. And there were people, fun to watch the play. I didn't play, but it was amazing. The people of all ages. I watched some pretty good, very young kids playing. So it is certainly a growing sport, and we're happy to be a part of helping that happen. So, council, I'm ready for a motion if you are.
Bloomington courts were packed today.
Good. Yeah,
So-
I drive by them every day. They're very often full.
Can I just wanted to let you know one more thing.
Oh, sure.
That changed from your council action item. We have had confirmation from the engineer that we've reviewed all the qualifications and they're approved. So we've done that
Okay.
next step.
Well, Mayor, I'm happy to offer a bid award for Little Valley Pickleball Phase 4 and other add-ons that are listed here in our breakdown under the engineers list to PCI for $962,215.73. Is that the right amount?
Yes.
Second.
And there you go.
Okay, we have a motion by Gil and a second by Betty. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If you dare, say nay. The motion carries.
Excellent.
Yeah. That was a nail biter, I know. Nice to have a full council here, and we will look forward to this. Thank you, everybody, for your support, your donations, your interest. Bob, did you have something?
Real briefly, I want to make sure that Gary knows the dates for the fall brawl, so he can be in the tournament. We will find you a partner that you will play. And,
Gil will do it.
All right, I'll take that challenge.
all right. And you know how enthusiastic we are in several respects. We're very enthusiastic. If you haven't guessed it by now, in our city council, in working with you. And we will continue to be enthusiastic in terms of supporting the program with the city. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so much from all of us.
Thank you. And Jimmy and I are in too. Okay? So let us know.
Okay, Michelle, we're in too.
I have a grudge match against the mayor from last time.
I thought you won that. Did I win?
I thought you won.
All right. Must have been close.
Cheated, but you won.
Yeah. All right. He has a long memory.
All right, we'll
Connie.
go ahead to the next bid opening, which is a change order for the Washington Fields Trail and Drainage Project. You're aware that we awarded a bid and given us notice of award to Interstate Rock, I believe, to do that
Right.
project along Mall Drive, the drainage project. And we've decided that in order to make the things work correctly there, with the installation of the traffic signal, there's lots of other things going on in the same area. In order to expedite both projects, we'd like to recommend a change order to do the installation of the traffic signal at the same time with the same contractor. We think the bids that we've received are similar to the bids we've already received for other traffic signals, so we think it can be done at the same. I mean, we wouldn't be saving any money by going out to bid, and yet we'd create a lot of confusion having two contractors or more working in the same area. So that's our recommendation. I don't know the amount.
Oh, the amount is $176,216.
Good explanation, Gary. Any questions, council?
I think the project cost that we've talked about, the drainage project, is around 1.6 million. So it's not something that would have tipped the bid to the next low bidder if this was included in the project. So
Right.
that
We're
was-
safe there.
And we didn't have a bid already on the signal.
No.
On its own, okay.
Mayor, quick question though.
Okay.
They will already have intact all of the power and other things from the other bid, right? Weren't they
Well, I think the
responsible?
power is being put in by Dixie Power right now. That was a separate
Right.
deal with Dixie Power. because it's
Okay.
right there at that intersection. They had
Right,
to
that's
move
what
it.
I meant
They
is-
had to move it for the project on the drainage ditch, and so,
Yeah,
yes,
we've
it'll all
already
be
seen-
coordinated that way.
We've seen that come through already.
Because I know sometimes in signals, they go, great, give us some power, and then there's a little add-on because we got to go, you know,
No,
100 feet or
I
something.
think the contract says that we provide the power in place, and
Right.
we've already contracted with Big C to
Just
do that.
clarification. Well, Mayor, I move that we provide for Interstate Rock this additional cost for a traffic signal on Mall Drive 3000 East at $176,216.
Second. Okay, motion by Gil to approve this change order, second by Joe. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So you don't think that those are coming in cheaper? There's other costs that the city provides the hardware, right, through the state contract, so. Okay, I think that's all the bid
Great,
openings,
thanks.
Connie, thank you.
I have a question for Connie, though.
Uh-oh,
On
Strip your gears there.
On 2 out of the 3 bids, there were no cents. It was like even. There's
I know.
usually always like 9 cents or something. I'm curious what that is costing.
that
They
all
sharpened
about?
their pencil, I think.
I think they're just getting tired of the pennies.
okay.
And if
We all
it's
are.
99, they're putting a 0 there instead.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, it's 5:30. You want to go into public hearings? All right, let's go into the first public hearing. Is a zone change request from C2 and R110 to PD Commercial for the Dinosaur Crossings project.
As the city manager just mentioned, it's a zone change. It's for proposed Smiths. And this first visual shows you the approximate location of the property outlined in red here. And that is Mall Drive and Riverside Drive. And we've worked through several layouts, and Planning Commission originally saw what's now an obsolete layout, and I'll show you the next one. You can kind of compare, right in the area I'm pointing, they've made a little change. And this new colored site plan, it's in your packet on a screen and on the wall behind you. This is what they're requesting. This just shows the general plan. Commercial would support the project there. This shows the zoning. Part of it is C2, and then there's R110. And this is a request to go from some C2 and R110 to plan development commercial zone. I won't read this, but in your packet is a narrative that explains and gives an overview of the project. And it is on 28 acres. And it talks about their service in the community and things that they've done for the public. And on the second part of it, the store will have a maximum height of about 45 feet at the entrance. That's the main entrance coming into it. However, most of the parapet walls surrounding the store will vary lower than that, from 30 feet to that maximum height. In addition to the Smith store, there will be about 107,000 square feet of commercial retail space that will be constructed over several phases as time goes on. I'll let the applicant kind of mention that if they'd like to when I'm done. These additional buildings will range in size, and we'll show you a chart on that in just a moment. So here is a colored site plan again that you've seen. We can come back and refer to it if we need to, but the plan development request for zone change is for the site, but it's really what you're looking at tonight is where I'm showing here with the arrow, Smith's and basically the gas station here, and then any related access and improvements to get into the site. But these other outline pads, they will come back in the future as zone change amendments where you would see the design, and we don't know the timing on that. We'll let the applicant speak to that, and that's not unusual. This shows the elevations of the store, Smith's Marketplace, and these are smaller. They're in your packet, but just shows the dimensions on them. I know you can't read them on a screen there, but you can see the variety and the aesthetics of each side of the building. And this is a nice rendering of what's been done up in North Ogden, Utah. And I believe the building that we'll have here will be very similar in design. That's not a rendering, that's a photo. I'm sorry, photo. It almost looks like a rendering, so excuse me. And then the gas station, part of what you'd be looking at tonight is the building itself, the convenience building, and then the canopy and the colors on it. We spent a lot of time talking about the uses with Planning Commission. We went through several renditions of it, and we had a list that's now obsolete. And the next one in your packet, this is what the Planning Commission recommends to the City Council. I'm going to kind of touch on some of these quickly. And the changes really are in red. They had this language here that's been taken out. Any retail or service use found in shopping centers in Utah or Nevada from time to time, excluding but not limited to. We'd like to have that language removed.
Ray, before you go further, this is their list, not something they took from our permitted uses.
This originated out of our commercial zone.
Okay?
And they took and printed out, and then with Planning Commission, they marked and crossed it out, and then it evolved into an alphabetical list. And then this was at the end of the Planning Commission meeting, how they made a few changes I wanted to just kind of go through.
So it's now our list?
It would be the list for this project, yeah.
Okay.
So we wanted to take that language out, and the applicant's agreeable to that. Antique store, apparel stores, athletic, automobile rental, bakery, barber shop, all of these things we feel could fit into that site for the future. Scratched, as you can see, was building material sales. You might allow something, and council can talk about it, like a Home Depot or something, although I don't see it at this size at this site. The intent was not to have like an outdoor lumber yard. Whatever it is would be indoors. And candy stores, carpeting store. I won't read everything here. You can look through the list again, A to Z. We got down to health club, spa. The applicant was concerned about having it include an indoor pool. We don't know if that would ever happen, but as long as it was indoor, that was a possibility. And council will just have to evaluate that as you see fit. Second screen going from laundry, library. Again, a lot of these things may never be there, but it's from a list that they have. Liquor store, Utah state license. You'll have to talk about that. Locksmith, medical office. We get down to pet supply. That's been marked up, and it says it's possible to have small animal boarding inside. That's something that the Planning Commission talked about, and you'll have to see if you feel that'd be appropriate there, considering noise and baffling and such. And the main point was just not to have any outside kennels. And we go through pharmacy. That would make sense at that commercial center. Restaurants. A lot of the pads may well turn out to be restaurants. Sign, sales, and service was crossed out. There was quite a bit of talk about that. And not to see, again, a lot of outside storage, and just didn't feel that it was appropriate at that area. Veterinarian services or clinic, and then the same type of thing about inside small animal boarding might be considered. They had a last page here. Long story short is Planning Commission just wants to wipe this out from their original proposal. And it said the following uses or services shall also be permitted in conjunction with. We felt that these are already incorporated in, like a restaurant, if you're going to be talking about any type of alcohol sales. That's something the council is used to seeing and dealing with. Small animal boarding, I've already brought that up in the A to Z list, so that would come out of here. Residential units on top of any commercial, that was removed. And body piercing or tattooing, clothing or accessory, we felt that is included for cosmetic type in the beauty shop or others that are already in the list. And in this section, Planning Commission recommended just be pulled, following uses specifically prohibited. If they're not in the list, they're not approved, was the thought. So that is a part of the zone change for the uses. Parking calculations, I'm not going to dwell on that except to show you we've been going through a lot of gyrations here, looking at their count. We've kind of got to compare their apples to our oranges, and we will do that as staff if this progresses forward and is approved as a zone change. I'll just mention that to kind of put this in perspective, on the left side where I'm showing with the arrow, this was their former site plan. That's why I showed you the layout was different. And then they've revised it. Staff's been looking all here on the right side. We're looking at how the buildings were affected and with the movement on the layout. So there were some pad changes and some square footages, but overall it's still very similar to what they originally proposed, and they adjusted it. The other thing to be thinking and talking about is they're requesting a master sign plan, and that's one of the driving forces they had with doing the plan development commercial. This is the old layout. I don't have a new layout to show it, but basically I've tried to show in yellow, they're looking at locations for signs, and out of all of these yellow circles, what that means is there would be 2 pylon signs for the site, 2 large signs, and the rest they're asking for at this time was 8 monument signs. So we put together, and it's in your packet, on the left is showing what the applicant is requesting. The middle column is showing the city code for major commercial streets, and on the right side is showing current code for non-commercial streets. And my understanding is Riverside Drive and Mall Drive fall under non-commercial streets for the sign ordinance. And they are, let me look, excuse me, I'm going to look at my chart in here. I should have marked up this one. Try to find it quickly.
Those 2 roads are considered non-commercial?
The last column to the right is non-major commercial streets, and it's not listed in the sign ordinance, which is again Riverside and Mall. So they're asking for freestanding signs, and again, if it was a major commercial street, signs have to be separated by 100 feet. And if you look at the next column down, they're asking for, where I'm pointing with the arrow, 2 pylon signs. And if you compare that to the right column, Councilman Bocott, on the street that they're classified as, they're not allowed any pylon signs. So that's kind of a major part of this request for the master sign plan.
I'm not probably lost, but I don't seem to have that particular thing in my package, unless I'm in the wrong one.
You should have this one in your packet.
No, it doesn't look like that. That's why I couldn't find it.
I did copy it. I just tried to clean up and make it look a little more legible. I'm sorry. So again, where I'm pointing in the center, one of the big things they're asking for is to have 2 pylon signs, and if it was a major commercial street, that is allowed up to 30 feet, but because it's non-major commercial, they're asking for that. And then down here, this third row down, they're asking for 8 monuments. They would be 10 feet in height. On a major commercial, they're allowed 1. However, on a non-major, they're allowed 4. So 2 pylon signs, 8 monuments is what they're asking for. And this is, I don't want to convolute it, this is obsolete. After the Planning Commission looked at their request for wall signs, this is showing wall signs for major tenants, minor tenants, those businesses on the pads, and those shops that are in line. And what's changed, and should be in your packet, is, again on this diagram, is it's come in line with the city ordinance. If you look at all 3 columns, 20% maximum on the front, 10% on the sides, and it matches the city except for the pad tenants. They're asking to go up to 20% on the rear and sides. I really don't process the sign permits, although I see and hear them talked about a lot. And my understanding is most businesses don't usually use that maximum percent, but the staff would be looking at these maximums and calculating them, and the difference again would be the pad. These are some examples of the type of signs that they are proposing. A lot of decorative stone on the bottom, and they've tried to make these monuments real attractive. And I won't dwell on those. I'll let the applicant, if he'd like to elaborate on them. And then these are showing typical pad signs. again, for those 8 that are requested, and then a fuel center for the gas, a fueling station.
Back on that other one, Ray. I don't like the fuel prices that are on there. I was hoping that Smiths won't be trying to go that high.
I'll let the applicant address gas prices. So, I'm trying to be sensitive to time. I won't read this, but staff has reviewed in Planning Commission their master sign plan. It is in your packet. I've tried to highlight a few things here, like number 6. They're asking for the 2 freestanding signs, those pylon signs. And then the height. We can always come back to these if need be.
Ray, in the original rendering, it had a lot of trees in the parking lot. Is that something that was just an artistic thing, or will we have lots of trees in the parking lot?
They'll have to meet code for a certain percentage. Is it 5%, John? In the parking lot, yeah. And we'll be looking at during a site plan review, the civil plans when they turn into us.
And
It would not, I'm sorry.
No, if not, you were going to say, you finish, Ray.
It would not be a sea of asphalt. The city's not looking for that.
Plus, Betty, I'm glad you brought that up. We might as well just throw it out right now, that their plan shows that the diamonds in the parking lot are about as small as they get. And I believe that we ought to say, that has to be at least a minimum of 6 feet on any single direction, because those trees will grow and then in a few years they will die. So whatever modifications have to be made, and I know that they're tight on parking. Everyone wants a lot of parking, but then why have diamonds in the parking lot for trees if they're just not going to survive or be healthy? And of course, then the Shade Tree Board will make recommendations for trees that should go in those, because generally the landscape architects are not familiar with the species and how they do here that won't hurt the asphalt or the concrete, but at the same time do provide some shade.
Okay. Reference Mall Drive Development Agreement, and I won't linger on this, but this is just randomly showing page 1 that there's a 13-page document. I'm sure City Attorney's Office, City Manager is much more familiar with this, but this was created originally when Mall Drive was being done. And there is there's a 2-page update for traffic impact study that has been done, and we've got that in the case file. I'm going to jump back to the report itself, and I'm going to go to page 2 under comments and quickly try to go through these, make sure I didn't miss anything. Number 1, the written text is in your packet, and that's in compliance with the requirements for the zone change amendment. And they've included a narrative. The use list, that can be discussed in detail, but that would go with the project if approved specifically. We've talked with the applicants, and they understand, and you've seen it a lot in the past. In the future, if there's some use, 6 months, a year or 2 from now, if they want to add or delete a use, they could come back. They're trying to get an encompassing list, but that may need some tweaking in the future. We don't really anticipate anything at this time, but just we had that conversation with them. For erosion protection, Rosenberg prepared a technical memorandum titled Dinosaur Crossing Erosion Hazard Assessment in 2013. That was mentioned because of its association with this site and project. 5, roadways. The developer will be responsible for installing roadway improvements in compliance with city's master plan along Mall and Riverside Drive. Wanted to make sure we mentioned a trail, a connection that'll be provided to the southern boundary. We'll look for that in the site plan review, the civil plans, but that needs to be mentioned so that it allows for safe travel and environment. 7, you're looking tonight at the design, the building, the elevations, the colors and materials. And behind the mayor is a materials board, and those are the earth tone and the natural stone. And as was shown, the photograph of the new Smiths is very similar to what is proposed for St. George. 8, they'll do a site plan review application, the civil plans. In the future, they'll be talking about how they will do preliminary plat and final plat. That's not tonight, of course. 10, staff will be looking at all the setbacks. 11, we'll have to spend a lot of time looking and digesting and dissecting the parking to make sure everything meets the requirements. We've gone through some motions, as I mentioned, but we'll look at that closer. 12, a big one for this zone change is a master signage plan. 13, they'll have to address drainage. 15, it'll be done in phases. 16, we'll look at lighting to make sure they have dark sky friendly lighting, and will require a photometric plan to look at. 17 will be landscaping. With the submittal of a site plan, landscape irrigation plan will be required. And you have mentioned tonight, Councilman Gilquist brought up about the diamond shapes and the type of trees. 18, this is just showing the type of structures that they want to have with the project and the approximate square footages, and it should be quite current. 19, there will be future pad development. So, to summarize, on page 5, the Planning Commission recommends approval, and they brought some suggested conditions that could or could not be part of a motion. Number 1, acreage, the project, the zoning for the entire area, that 28.802 acres is what the zone is changing to plan development commercial. And then as part of it, you're looking specifically at the Smith store and the gas area. They'd have to come back for the others, buildings in the future. The use list is recommended for approval with the edits that were shown, those in red that I quickly went through. 3, the building elevations, the colors and materials are recommended for approval as presented for Anchor A, which is Smith's. And then clarify this is only for that building. 4, landscaping recommended for approval as presented. 5, sign plan, master sign plan is recommended for approval for the entire site. 6, this is kind of dragging it out, but just making sure it's clear, this approval is not for design of the other buildings, just for the grocery store and the gas station. 7, they'll come back and do civil plans. 8, the roadways will be developed with the city traffic engineer and a master road plan. 9, addresses a trail. 10, in the future, they'll have to do the plats, they'll have to do setbacks, parking, lighting, erosion protection, and the height is, again, that would have to be approved, the height that they're asking for. It was just the main entry that was high, and the majority, I think, was under 30, so. And I'm kind of belaboring it, but this is a zone change amendment, and it would not require a conditional use permit. The height is addressed in this, so they wouldn't come back for that. And then I put some rough notes here about the parking lot diamonds and the shade trees. Thanks for your patience. That concludes my comments. I'd like to invite the applicant up if okay, and then I can come back and answer questions or they can.
Any questions first of Ray, council?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Ray,
Knowing that we're going to still hear from the applicant, but
and maybe the applicant can speak to this too as well. Ray, as I'm looking at the layout here on this future road along the river, I know this has come up in the past about the erosion control boundary and development close to the river, and we've talked about the fact that it'd be nice, to have that road as kind of the buffer. That pad there, why have we just kind of put that pad over there by itself? And is there a reason why? Does that road line up with something? Is there something there that we need to, or what would it hurt? Right here. Yeah, to make that road be the boundary.
Instead of the road coming here.
Right, and leaving that pad kind of over there on its own against the river.
I'd like to let the applicant kind of address that, and then I'll see if our traffic engineers have any comments too afterwards. And I should make an introduction real quick. I neglected to do that, and then we will get to that. We have tonight with us Brett Wallen. He's with AWA Anderson Wallen Associates. And then Rick Woodbury is here, and Keith Bushwell. So I don't know who would like to come up and address that.
Ray, I had a question.
More questions.
And it relates to parking again. It seems like at one time when we were in the planning commission, the individual pads were going to provide their own parking. Is that still part of a plan to do that?
We were talking about that today. We feel that we should look at the overall project parking for the entire site. And we've done that like out in Red Rock Commons when we've looked at that entire spaces for the entire site and the square footage and the breakdown. The pads will come in the future, and they have talked about having, like I'm pointing here, the parking ad is sustainable for it. But in reality, we'll be looking at the entire site, and if they need some spaces out here, that would count for it.
Is there a possibility because of what may be on those pads that there wouldn't be enough parking?
We don't want to have enough parking. We're going to be asking them when they show these pads, is this a restaurant, is this retail? Because as you know, it's 2.5 times more intensive for the restaurant.
That's my point. We don't know what's going in there now, so how do we plan the entire parking for the whole place?
I think you plan it based on their anticipated design, and then you control the uses that go into the pads by the amount of parking that is left for the site. You first say that Smith's Marketplace requires 100 stalls, whatever. So they show on that map they have 170 stalls. So the next use that comes into you, because you haven't approved all the other uses, and it takes 50. So at that point, they got 20 stalls left. So that's where the control comes in the uses, because if they were building shelled space, we wouldn't recommend that they do it, because that's what happened to us in some other locations where we did a whole site plan like this and we approved it, and they built in shelled space and then didn't tell us what the uses were going to be inside the shelled space, and then we got a higher intensive planning or parking requirement in that shelled space, and they didn't have enough parking. So this ties their, in my opinion, this ties their hand to the pads that they have to develop, that they can't go beyond the total parking that's there for the uses. That's why a PD zone is perfect in this situation, because you only approve them as they bring the projects in.
And that was where
That's
didn't
where we
do in
fouled
the
up on
last
the other one, was we approved the entire zone change,
Yeah.
and they built the spec space out, and there wasn't necessarily enough parking based on the uses that were allowed, and then you get into a real problem. And you have that occasionally on several projects around, and that's something we need to be very careful with, that you could approve the spec space, but when the use comes in and you don't have the opportunity to approve the use because it's already shelled in, then we're in trouble. And I think this solves that problem, in my opinion.
That's good.
Unless all those pads became restaurants.
Well, they
we'd
can't.
probably
We
be in
can't.
trouble.
They can't,
We'd have
because
to
you have
okay
to
it.
approve it.
Okay.
When they come in with the next pad, they're going to say, this is a restaurant, and based on your ordinance, the restaurant parking requires X number of spaces, and so there they are. And so you cross those off with the Smith's project area, and it leaves you so many left.
Okay.
Now, they might argue with you later on about whether you need that many parking stalls under your ordinance or not, but Carl's got it.
Let me just give you a couple of examples as well. What happens also, this is during the building process, but this is going to go on for years and years and years, and then you have changes in those businesses. And so Ray keeps a chart when you have like a strip mall or any place where you have multi-businesses in the same, using the same parking area, so that he can keep track of how many stalls are needed for each type of use. And as a new one comes in, you say, yes, there's room for it, or no, there isn't room for that. So then they have to look at, well, can I get parking from some other location? For example, you had the dance hall that wanted to go in at the old theater. There wasn't enough parking with those businesses there, so then they tried to get the lot below. And eventually we did approve that, going through all that, but they had to find the parking from some other location that was close enough that would still be allowed. And so you do have those ongoing issues that we have to continue to watch and address. But we do have a process for that.
Plus, it's a formula of use and size of building.
Yes. And they can ask to come back and have the parking reduced, as Gary mentioned, and often you do get those as well, where they argue, you know, time of day is a factor you can look at. You may have businesses that are more active in the evening and others that are more active during the day, and so you may be able to reduce the need for parking because of the type of uses and that sort of thing.
Good question. Gil, I believe, had a question.
Ray, I think even though you may feel like some of our questions aren't necessarily ones you can answer specifically, I think it helps the applicant to hear them, give them a little time to think about it, and then present it. So, Ray, a couple of things. Your item 4 from the Planning Commission is item 17, I think. Yes, on the descriptive center section. On 17, it's commented on that the submittal of the site plan review application will include a landscape and irrigation plan. But on 4, it says the landscaping is recommended for approval as presented. And I think there's going to be a change there, because they're certainly going to have to do something with the parking lot. So I would prefer that number 4, if there's a motion, mirror what is said in 17.
Okay,
Okay?
that makes sense.
All right. Then down below in, again, the Planning Commission's recommendations, item 7, to avoid a whole bunch of problems, we should probably encourage as strongly as possible, I know we can't require it, but that a local landscape architect, of which I am not, Ed, that they be included in their plans in some way, advisory, because we continue to get plans submitted to the city with plant material that does not grow here, or that requires too much water. So even though Smith's being fairly corporation headquarters not in our area, tend to know somebody where they are, or their architect out of the area knows somebody, those plans typically are not sufficient to apply to our area. So having said that, that would be a recommendation. The trail that is referred to in item 6 on the summary.
Is that
Well,
item 9
in
on
the,
page
yeah.
5?
in the conditions.
Okay.
Right. Is that the one simply along the river? Or is there an additional stub that, right
My
there?
understanding was right in here, how it's going to tie in.
Okay. And of course, there'll be sidewalk that ties the Dinosaur Museum down to,
This should be the Dinosaur Museum right here.
on 2200 East, that'll all have sidewalk, it looks like, I believe.
My
So
understanding
that
is
the
that
Dinosaur Museum can be accessed by the trail. See that little
Is
piece
that
of
correct?
trail along the river?
Yes,
Is that
I'm
going to
getting a
parallel?
nod, yes.
And then lastly, there's quite a bit of elevation change, and here's where it might require some further definition of how they're going to do it. But on the west side of the Dinosaur Museum, there's quite a bit of elevation change according to the plan of where they have an ingress and egress off of Riverside. That will require some sort of retention or wall or something, and that perhaps is already being planned for, but on the rendering, you can't tell that it's there. It probably does need to have some sort of descriptive information.
All right,
but we-
am I pointing to it here? Is that what you're talking about? Here's the Dinosaur Museum?
Go on the up.
Yeah.
Go along that entrance right there. Yep, you're on it, Ray.
Okay.
That area right there, because I know that the Dinosaur Museum doesn't have any funds to retain what they already have as their property. So that will need to be on Smith's nickel to hold up that, because they're going to be excavating up to the property line. I'm sure they're aware of that. We just ought to get it out in the open.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's give some time to the applicant.
Thanks. Brett Wallen with Anderson Wallen and Associates here representing Smith's Food and Drug, the applicant. I also have Keith Buswell with us tonight here representing the property owner, and Rick Woodbury representing Woodbury Corporation. When we made this application, the property owner was currently working with Woodbury in a joint venture, and so as this process has gone through, they've come online, and that's the reason you see a modification to the site plan from when we originally submitted. to the city. So this project's come together fairly quickly. There's great anticipation to move forward, have a marketplace store for Smith's Food and Drug at this location. Smith's has recently completed 3 marketplace stores, one in Los Alamos, New Mexico, one in West Jordan, Utah, and one in North Ogden, Utah. So there's some opportunities to see some of these new stores. They're exciting, and the communities, you're welcome to make some phone calls to those communities. They've been far exceeded their expectations and been well received in the communities. They've had very good success. Wanted to mostly try to answer your questions. I personally have worked on the project for some time. I think it's about 7 years. Worked with your staff for a lengthy period of time. I would say there's been mountains moved, and I think that'd probably be true. So there's been a significant amount of time and effort working with the city on Mall Drive and getting to where we are today to have a project that could move forward. And so we're excited to see the mountains down and a site graded and look like it's a venture ready to move forward. So to answer some of your questions, and I'll try to see if I remember all of them. The roadway, the Riverside Road, as it comes up and butts into Mall Drive, basically we've been directed that location by city staff to make sure we have adequate sight distance as you get off that bridge to be able to make those turning movements. And so that wasn't our preferred location, but we have worked with city staff to modify it to get it to that location to make sure it's safe. I don't know if that makes sense.
Everyone understand that? I think that does make sense.
Currently, that pad is not, we just did a survey and it's not graded exactly. It should be raised up another 10 feet. And so there's some work there to be done. As far as the diamond planters and the landscaping go, my firm will be doing the architecture, landscape architecture and civil design. And we've done a number of projects here in the city. And we'd be glad to, provide you this work with staff and provide a list of the projects we've done and where we've had those successes. I remember about 10 plus years ago, I came in and they said, you're not on the pre-qualified list. I said, how do you get on the list? They say you sign up, and I did. So I like that program. But we've been doing work for some time, and we really love working down here in the city of St. George. And your city manager and staff have been awesome to work with. I would even volunteer to play with Gary in the pickleball thing, but I'm not sure I want to move up to the senior division. And I haven't played either, Gary, so.
He doesn't vote, but he does have quite a lot to say around here. So.
The harassment goes a long ways, but I'd rather play golf with him. But as far as the signage goes, on the fuel center signs, when we first started doing these, they were $1.79. And then they moved them up to where because we were always getting harassment. Now the fuel prices have come down and they haven't adjusted them, but those are just been on there for a while. Those, the signage has been completed recently in West Jordan, Utah. And if they're up and available and they're quality signs. The building colors have been, the earth tone colors have been adopted. The earth tones for this store are slightly different than the picture you saw of North Ogden. We think they're enhanced. These are actually integral color blocks and split face blocks. So the North Ogden store that you saw in the picture were actually were painted block. So this is an enhanced store. The other questions I think that you had, did I miss any?
I don't think so.
Well, I think it goes without saying thank you, because it takes a lot to pull a project together, and that side of town will certainly be benefited. And I'm sure you're aware, at least your landscape architect is that, for example, we have a few areas where they try to incorporate that little diamond with 4 parking stalls, and somebody invariably hits the tree, or it's too small and isn't healthy. And a few creative places have used, for example, a tree diamond where then the smaller resulting space is either for motorcycles or bikes or something, and they still get some use out of the adjustment, but at the same time, I'm sure you want, as anybody, and down here especially, it's funny how people will say, well, we don't want the trees, and then you'll see everyone flock to those 4 little tiny shaded spots inside of a parking lot, even if that means they walk further to the front door.
Yeah, let me mention the 2 pedestrian ways that you see that come out of the front door of the Smiths. I can't remember the width, but we've standardized those on our new sites, and they actually have landscaping in them all the way along. We haven't done the final design, so this is fairly preliminary in a rezone process, but we've enhanced on our other projects, we've actually enhanced the entrances coming into the shopping center with raised planters and trees in those. We've put LED lights on the one in West Jordan. We actually flood those with light at night. These shopping centers are intended to be upscale. The landscape plan that you see there is what we would anticipate as far as a conceptual with all of those trees. So that is something that our client wants as well as the developer. And so, I think you could look to any of the centers that we've been doing. The one in West Jordan we did has substantial landscaping, and we anticipate this being done as well.
Great.
So I'd stand for questions or harassment from Gary.
I'll reserve comment.
Okay, for later.
But our, our landscape architect staff and we'll be reviewing the plans, and we review the types of plants and trees that are going to be going in there. So we try to make certain that they will survive here. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions, council? Or any questions for staff?
Just maybe a clarification comment. The sign, or where it doesn't appear they meet the code for a commercial zone, but my understanding is since it's a PD zone, when you approve the site, you can approve the signs, and I quite frankly thought they were very tastefully done. And I think that, and Joe asked me about commercial. I mean, Riverside Drive is pretty well commercial, but we've never really amended our definition and our designation of those commercial streets for a while. And we had this discussion on Mall Drive, I think in front of the proposed Lynn store as well. But certainly if this was if you want to talk about a commercial area, Mall Drive and Riverside Drive in that particular location would meet that qualification, but you can prove it through the PD zone, and that's good so you can see what it's going to look like. And I think those were, are very tasteful, even though I hate signs.
Anything else? If not, this requires a public hearing for this potential zone change. So I will open the public hearing at this time for any who may have come to make comments about this item, number 3A on our agenda today. Sir, please come forward and state your name if you would.
Kendall Clements. I don't recall hearing about that pad, why that road was shifted down there. I don't know if that was addressed or not.
He did address it, but maybe he could come forward and just.
Sure. I apologize if I fell asleep.
I know, I'm kind of boring. But yes, when we worked with the city staff on the traffic, one of the concerns is as you come across the bridge, you got to be able to have the sight triangles. And so that was where the traffic engineer for the city recommended we put it.
Just puts a little more distance and therefore a little better.
That makes perfect sense.
Yep.
And then lastly, a comment, I live in the community here, and my wife is excited for Smith's to come in. Good competition. Albertson's already lowered their pricing in their food, and so I'm looking forward to Smith's being there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing at this time. Come back to you, council. Any other questions? If not, I'd be ready for a motion if you're so inclined.
Mayor, I'll make a motion for this project. We've completed that public hearing. So what we're talking about is a zone change request from C2 and R110 to PD commercial, planned development commercial on 28.802 acres at the site addresses we have on Riverside and Mall Drive, approximately 2200 East and Riverside Drive to the river, with the requested information in the packet, including those items from the Planning Commission, items 1 through,
13,
I think they have 15.
15, yep.
Including the amended heights that were presented and the signage as has been explained under the requirements of a PD commercial and our protections there. And also to make sure that items on the Planning Commission recommendation list, especially items 4 and 17, match in language. In fact, that 17 be the adopted language on that plan. Anything else?
Second.
I think that was it.
Okay.
Okay, so, motion by Gil and a second by, was that you, Michelle? Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, this is an ordinance requiring a roll call vote. So all in favor, starting with Betty, say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries.
I think, Mayor, that goes without saying, too, that the elevation change between the Dinosaur Museum property and Smith's will be addressed.
And we'll address a lot of those issues in the review of the plans when they're getting
Right.
through the process. So we'll make sure that
Site
happens.
plan review.
Same
Thank
way
you.
with the size of the tree spacing and all that stuff.
Thank you and good luck. It's a long time coming, I know. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Just tell Mr. Wadman to bring his $2 million check for his share of that bridge, so we'll expect that too.
Thanks, Keith.
You thought I never forget, Mayor?
Yeah,
Gary
good.
never forgets.
yeah.
Are you ready for item
3B?
3B.
Yep.
This is also a zone change. It reads, consider a zone change from A1 agriculture to R18 single-family residential on 20.66 acres, generally located in Little Valley east of 3000 East Street, north of the logical extension of Crimson Ridge Drive. Development Solutions Group is the applicant. This shows the general vicinity, and just for reference, you can see the replacement airport. And this is an aerial. We'll be looking up in this area, which is shown in the general plan, low-density residential, and that shows the existing zoning. And then the applicant has submitted this map, and this rectangular yellow area is the zone change request. We make sure that staff does not have a lot of comments on this. The Planning Commission does recommend approval of the zone change from A1 to R18 on 20.66 acres. And that really concludes staff's comments. I believe the representative is here tonight. And if there's any questions for the applicant or staff.
Council, any questions of staff, first of all? Okay. Did you say it was the applicant here? Sorry.
The representative.
Representative.
Steve, are you representing?
Anything you'd like to say? Okay.
Steve, if you'll just state your name.
Yeah.
I'm Steve Kamlowski with Development Solutions Group. We're just, yes, this zone change matches the area. Excuse me. Yeah, this zone change, it matches the area well. We're excited to move forward with it. And if you have any questions for me, we take them.
Any questions for Mr. Kamlowski? Okay, thank you. Gil, any questions before we open the public hearing?
Ray, at some point, we probably should be brought up to date on where their master plan parks, regional as well as neighborhood, are part of their commitment to us for providing that acreage. It may not be tonight, and it doesn't need to be. I mean, nothing should be a surprise. You need lead time to figure that out, but it would just be nice to know where they're planned, because that was part of future time. Thank you.
Gary, any comments?
Well, yes, we're having some discussions on an ongoing basis with the property owners out in that particular area, and there's not necessarily been an agreement on where those would go. And neighborhood parks versus some detention basins and retention basins or whatever they are. And so, you know, we're still having that dialogue, but it shouldn't affect this particular zone change.
Okay. I will open the public hearing for anyone who may have come to express comments or ask questions about this item, number 3B on our agenda today. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to you, council, for any further discussion or questions or a motion.
You know, Mayor, after the zone change, which is not a place to really bring this up, but maybe right after, we should put on a request for the upsizing of utilities and pipes into this area as well. I know that our staff, and Gary's way ahead of the game there, but I just want to make sure that they are, as we're not tapping into lines that can't handle volumes and things like that. But
I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, we have a master plan. They've been conforming to the master plan, and we've been updating or upsizing the lines based on the general plan. I mean, so I think we're okay that way.
Okay.
Do we have an idea about how many,
Units
over this 20 acres, how many more homes we can put on there?
with,
like-
with
From R110 to R,
My
1.8.
guesstimation is it's 20 acres, 4 dwelling units per acre. I don't know, considering roads,
minus
maybe
roads,
80,
60 to
65.
on 20 acres.
so 120 more cars.
We got to get somebody to use 3,000 East.
I know. I'm just afraid. I know it fits into the master plan. We keep going smaller and smaller. I know we talked about this, and I don't know. It just gives me heartburn every time we go smaller. That being said, I have heartburn over a lot of things.
Need some
Try
Tums.
antacid.
Yeah, Tums in my
Yeah.
office there.
Well, and that's kind of why,
I'm holding fast to my line over there on 2450.
we're with you. I'm with you.
This makes some sense where it's close to the,
Yeah, and I know we talked about
Elementary,
that,
yeah.
that we wanted to put some of that smaller, so.
and with what's around
gonna-
it, but
I'm
you're
gonna
right.
live with it.
You're not gonna love it.
I'm not gonna love it, but I'm gonna live with it. But don't try to come across to the north. Just don't do it.
Well, and you drive out there, the one, it's not pertinent to a zone change. The neighborhoods are nice, they're laid out, the homes are beautiful, there's just some things in there that would make it in the future even nicer if we could somehow incorporate it.
Yeah, and maybe someday not everybody's gonna have to come across the river, because we talk about this all the time. We're limited in the number of roads we have across the river, and we're congested. I mean, you just live where I live and come into town, and you're just like, this is not fun anymore to try to come into town. And the more people we put out there that have to come into town, the more that's gonna be a problem, and they're gonna have to drive over that beautiful chip seal project. Which I didn't want to bring up, but I did.
But as much as you may not like that, I do love what they did on River Road. I think that turned out great. They were
Yeah.
fast about it.
Yep.
They cleaned up any little messes. I was impressed with that.
It's a good
Mayor,
product. Yep,
If you're ready,
sure.
I'll make a motion so that Jimmy doesn't have to.
I was going to.
You should.
Okay,
All
I
right.
will. I'll make a motion that we approve the zone change from agriculture to R18 on 20.66 acres in Little Valley, east of 3000 East, north of the logical extension of Crimson Ridge Drive.
Second.
Motion by Michelle and a second by Betty. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, starting with Joe, say aye.
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 That motion carries.
I
Thank
think
you.
we ought to note that maybe agricultural one is kind of a misnomer for the property.
It was
Because
kind
it's
of a
really,
holding.
it's never had any water on it, and it's never been an agricultural, so it's not like you're taking a farm, followed, and and grow something growing on it, because all it's growing is alkali and weeds, and it has probably had some animals grazing on it, I guess. But
We talked about that, I think, I remember us talking about that when we made the master plan and said, but we'd allow that out there, so
yeah,
I realized that, and that's why I voted.
It just hurts a little bit.
It does, it hurts a little bit.
well, I think
down
the
there in the
traffic
gut.
issue is the concern
Yep.
that we've got to look at, and getting the connection across 3,000 on down to Commerce and trying to get the 4 lanes and get that. But you're right, we're constricted just like we are in Green Valley. Everybody says,
Yep.
I live in Green Valley and the Dixie Drive is very congested, but we got the same problem there because we got a hill. Down here we got the river, and so that's just a fact of life that we have very little control over that. So, but okay, is that
driving-
it from public hearings?
One more.
Oh, we got the one for the budget amendments, right?
Yep.
Okay, this is the second to last amendment that we'll have, public hearing for our current budget to make some necessary changes to it, some recommended changes. And so you should have in your packet some of the listing of those adjustments that we've made. And some of them you've already probably remember when we've talked about them previously, but primarily it's just bringing into line some of the grants and some of the unexpected revenues that we've got with those expenditures. You can see on number 1 and number 2, police grants, for state grants, and then spending those dollars. Some recreation equipment because our youth revenues are up. That's the corresponding revenue for the expenditure on 3 and 4. Arts Festival, we got a donation from Sun River to help us with a little program at the stage there. That's just some few dollars. Let's see. Number 7 was the retirement expenses for the finance director. The Dixie Academy building, the new restrooms that we've talked about getting going down there for the Children's Museum building. Talking about expending those and paying for them out of the Capital Projects Fund. And then the $65,000, this is a revenue source from the state. These are for some of the cement work that we did along Bluff Street, along that drainage on the west side of Bluff Street that the state asked us to have our guys do it. So we did those and they reimbursed us there. And I think number 10 is the Southgate Golf Course. This is just a technical adjustment because we've got goods, it's the first year we've been in business of selling goods at the various golf courses, and so this is to recognize some of the cost of the merchandise and the sales that we got from those. So capital project funds, nothing really too much there except for item under other funds, $130,000 for the roof at the DXATC building. We've had some failures at that roof and some leaks, and so out of our economic development funds where we've bought this building and renting it to the DXATC, we want to go in there and fix the roof. That wasn't anticipated the first of the year. The rest of them, yes?
On that, since we purchased that building out of economic development funds, does the rent we receive go back into that fund?
Goes back into that fund, but then we've been sending some of that money to the general fund to sponsor some of the economic development activities in the general fund.
Perfect, thanks.
Now, in the transportation improvement fund, these are just making up for some of the costs that we've incurred on Milepost 8, the intersection. And they were already previously budgeted, but we never got invoiced for it, so now we're recognizing that invoice from the state. We'd already agreed to pay them. The River Road Bridge widening project, that we agreed to get going on that. So this is for some of the design work that's being done. If you've been out there, you can probably see some of the survey markers. We're trying to get going to get that thing. And then in your current budget, we have some revenues to pay for some of the costs of that. The RAP tax fund, it's interesting that we got our first check for $200 and we just spent $1 million. So
Yeah.
I hope you recognize that in your exuberance over those pickleball courts.
Hope people keep buying things in St. George.
really, we're establishing a RAP tax. In your new budget, there'll be a separate fund for the RAP tax so we can count for the revenues and then the expenditures. And so in the meantime, until we receive enough funds in the next year, we'll have to kind of see how, we'll have to front some dollars from some other funds in order and then be paid back when we receive those revenues.
So we can reimburse that fund?
Yes. When we passed that resolution a month or two ago, that we can reimburse ourselves up to $10 million. We anticipate issuing some bonds later on, and then we can reimburse ourselves back for those costs. We're anticipating that between the end of May and through June, that we'll spend $408,000 on those courts. The remaining $600,000 will be in next year's fiscal year, next year's budget. Impact fees, we received some. The bids were a little higher than what the estimates were, and so we're spending $125,000 in impact fees for the St. James Trailhead. And the other one is the Brigham Road Detention Basin. We're doing some design work. We thought we had some design work donated there, but that person left their engineering firm, so we have to pay for it now. So that's it, unless you've got any questions on it.
Any questions on any of those modifications to the fiscal year budget? And that's our current budget, just to be clear. If not, I will open the public hearing for any who may have come to discuss any of these items on the budget amendment. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to you, council.
I move that we approve the amendments to the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget.
Second.
Motion by Betty and a second by Michelle. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, starting with Betty, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
All right, and we're all the way down to 4A, I guess. Have you got that, Wes?
Okay, so item 4A is to consider approval of an ordinance vacation on a portion of a maintenance easement that crosses the west 15 feet of Lot 13 of Sundown Estates. The applicant is Barbara Crossley. This is right here behind Councilman Almquist. When Sundown Estates was recorded, the city required an easement right here on the west side of that lot to access this wash for maintenance, to clean it out and so forth. The applicant has gone and talked to the church right here, and the church has agreed to move that easement over on their property and allowing them to vacate that and put a wall right there to enclose their property. And so basically that gets vacated, and then there's an easement then that will be granted along the church property that will provide that access.
So it's their property now, right? It just has an easement.
Yeah, it's their property now, and
Good.
they just want to enclose it for privacy.
It's nice to do it right.
And there'll still be an easement there.
So the easement here on
moves.
their property will be vacated.
But
There's
we
the
still
one-
have an easement to get where we,
There's
okay.
one on the mayor's desk to sign from the church granting that.
Any questions? I'm just glad that they're doing it right instead of just like building the wall, you know? This way we have a new easement, you know, that serves us well. Any questions? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
Motion to approve the ordinance to vacate the west 15 feet of the Lot 13 of Sundown Estates easement.
Motion by Jimmy and a second by Joe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, starting with Joe, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
I believe that takes us to staff reports, so we'll go to the report from the Planning Commission meeting held May 12th.
On the Planning Commission report, there are 3 items to be advertised for June 4th for public hearings. I'd like to read those. Item 1A, consider a zone change amendment on 1 acre property that's zoned PDC, Plan Development Commercial, to accommodate future development of Sprinkler Supply Wholesale Retail Store. Property is generally located east of I-15 Freeway, north of 300 South Street. The owner is GMG2 Investments, and the applicant is Mr. Mike Canning. That's case 215 ZCA 009. Item B, consider a zone change, request to rezone, and this is 3 areas. Area 1, 1.695 acres from C2 to PDR. Second portion is Area 2, 0.074 acres from PDR to C2. And the third component is Area 3, 0.412 acres from C2 to PDR. All 3 combined is 2.18 acres. Kind of looks like a bow tie when you look at the properties. It's to accommodate future residential development out there in the southern corridor of Desert Crest. The property is generally located at the southeast corner of Desert Canyons Parkway and a Southern Parkway. Owner is Development Solutions. Representative is Mr. Ken Miller, case 2015 ZC012. And finally, third item, consider a general plan amendment to go from commercial to MDR, medium density residential, approximately 7.89 acres. Property is generally located at the northeast corner of Brigham Road and Desert Hills Drives. This proposal is to change the general plan to allow for future submittal of a zone change for Desert Hills townhomes to allow development of a multifamily project. The applicant is Sitla. Representative is Mr. Ryan Thomas, Development Services, case 2015 GPA 004. Those are 3 items requesting be set for June 4th.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Any questions? If not, I entertain a motion to set these public hearings to be advertised for June 4th, 2015.
So moved.
Ooh,
Second.
motion by Michelle and a second by Jimmy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
There are several more items on a Planning Commission report. Next will be 2 hillside permits, and John Willis has the first one.
So the next item is 2A. It's a hillside permit. Consider a request for an amendment to a hillside development permit for Red Cliffs Park. The applicant is Red Cliffs Park LLC, and the representative is Mr. James Sullivan. The total area is approximately 34.58 acres. The property is located at Nevada Drive and 3000 East Street and is zoned PDR. So this is an amendment to a hillside permit that was already issued by City Council. This is the subject property. The zoning is PDR. The applicant, this development has been built in phases, and so the applicant has built most of the subdivision, and this is the last remaining portion of that subdivision. This is what's being proposed. In the darker color is what was originally approved. It included the 2 cul-de-sacs, and so the request is to connect those 2 cul-de-sacs. And the reason they're requesting that is for connectivity, and also there is issue with their sewer depth. Without connecting these cul-de-sacs, the sewer depth would be about 26 feet, opposed to connecting them, and it would be approximately 9 feet. The hillside ordinance requires that all major developments located in the overlay zone and percentage of 20% requires a hillside permit. They are within their required hillside disturbance. However, there is a small wash that they are requesting it not be included in the determination. The code does allow for the Hillside Review Board and also the City Council to review such request. The ordinance, I'll go ahead and read the ordinance that allows for that approval. It states, small washes or rock outcrops which have slopes distinctively different from surrounding property and not part of the contiguous topography may be excluded from slope determination if, in the opinion of the Hillside Review Board, the exclusion of such small areas from slope determination will not be contrary to the overall purpose of this article. The applicant believes that they have met this criteria, and on May 6, 2015, the Hillside Review Board did review and did recommend approval for the application. The Planning Commission also reviewed the application and did recommend approval also. Here's a couple pictures of the site here. This is showing the small wash that they are requesting that not be counted as part of that determination. And that does conclude staff's presentation, if you have any questions. I believe the applicant is here and available to answer any questions.
Any questions? I was just wondering if that was a navigable waterway, but I guess we're okay. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Ready for your action if you're so inclined, council.
Well, Mayor, I was there, so only is fitting.
Thank you for being there. That's good.
Actually, it's an improvement. You know, once they got into the requirements of the sewer especially. Plus, the nice thing is there are a couple of areas, because the cul-de-sacs don't need to be so large and the road is contiguous now, that they'll be able to, one, preserve one area that would have been slated for destruction, and then another area they'll be able to restore. That would be an enhancement. So anyway, I move that we approve the amended hillside development permit for Red Cliffs Park. Mr. James Sullivan, applicant.
Second.
Motion by Gil, second by Joe. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
On the Planning Commission report, there's a second hillside permit request, and it reads, consider request for hillside development permit to allow for the removal of isolated, non-contiguous, insignificant slopes to allow development of a multi-family apartment. The property owner is Mr. Randy Simonson. The applicant is Mr. Jared Nelson. Representative is Mr. Rob Reed, Rosenberg Associates. Total area is about 38.86 acres. Property is located directly north of the electrical substation at Riverside Drive and 1990 East Street, and is south of the Rebel Creek Ridge Apartments, case 2015 HS002. On the screen and in your packet on the board shows a vicinity in sight. X marks the spot here. Here's Riverside Drive, and it's a little bit hidden behind the yellow here, but Four Master Drive as you come down. And then you come down that steep incline, that road, and you got the substation here. And right in here is where they'd like to develop apartments. There's two parcels. This is the largest piece. This is showing, it's under the same ownership. And then this little cutout I'll show next, right up here I'll show next is the actual site, although all of the property is included and affected, and I'll try to elaborate on that. Here's the site, this parcel that they would like to develop the apartments on. And this is showing that it's zoned R3, so that would support multiple family. That larger parcel, as you remember, that was out here, that's all R110. And then this is just showing a general planned land use, some LDR, some medium density, and some open space, and we're looking right in here. They're wanting to call a project, if the hillside permit is approved, they're wanting to come forward with a project and call it Catamaran Plaza. I asked them why, and I'm told because the H looks like a catamaran. I don't know, maybe there's a better explanation, but. And in the hillside report, we give a full set of plans, the hillside board. They get the large 24 by 36, and they get the slope maps. That's one of the major things they're looking at, not all. But this is just showing what they look at. They look at the slopes, and the slope maps are colored to show from 0 to 19, or 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 100%. And that corresponds to these red colors. So you can see in this example, they've got superimposed this H, which is a footprint for future apartments. And this red is, as you think about the legend for the slopes, is the highest slope. And the green is all under where it could be disturbed. But the question is, can they get a permit for these isolated and considered to be insignificant slopes, because they're not aesthetic, they're not rock outcroppings, they're just kind of undulating mounds, for lack of a better word. This is from the plans. It's showing a cross-section of what's proposed. It's just a portion of a plan, but they're showing that they'd like to fit in a 4-story building there, and they'd have 2 levels of parking that are actually underground. There'll be parking around the project, but a lot of the parking would be underneath. I'm trying not to say too much because that'll be another project if it comes forward, but just kind of show why they're asking the hillside permit. There is a long report that the Hillside Board looked at, and we always ask for a geotechnical report. I just showed the cover, didn't include that. Here's looking down 1990 East Street, and as I show the arrow going to the left, that is where the project is on the hillside here. X marks the spot. And then looking a little further down to the south, there's the car wash. And again, back up here is pretty much the area affecting some of these little mounds or hills. There's the substation. And I just kind of put this in, FYI, the applicant has submitted to staff a conditional use permit and a site plan review. It all hinges upon if the hillside permit's approved. And just to kind of show you what they're trying to fit in here, this is what conceptually it would look like. So I'd like to go to the report, and it's the larger parcel that I showed you is 32 acres. The parcel that they're wanting to work on and get the permit for is 6.8, almost 7 acres. And on the second page of the report, I'm not going to read all of the ordinance, but it does list what applicable ordinances are. And as you continue on to the third page, John Willis read the same language for the other hillside permit you just saw about the insignificant topography. So in the middle of that page, staff comments, this area includes small isolated hills and mounds that are non-contiguous to any significant outcroppings, and staff recommends they be allowed to be removed. If the Hillside Board recommends approval of the hillside permit, then a permit has to advance the Planning Commission. We take the report, this is a report that went to Hillside, and then after it's gone through Hillside, we expand it with Planning Commission and then to Council, so that's why it's worded that way. A density bonus transfer has been requested for the site, and staff will review all applicable codes and work with the applicant as required for determination if it may be granted, and it looks like it can be from what we've seen, but tonight we're just talking about the hillside permit. Staff will work with the applicant for application plan submittals. That would be the civil engineering plan set. If a hillside permit is approved by council, then the applicant does intend to do a CUP and a site plan review, which they've done. The Hillside Board met out on site on May 6th. It was the same day this was their second site that they went to. And this was the motion that they had made. A motion to approve the removal of isolated insignificant slopes on approximately 6.84 acres as presented on the contour map to locate the proposed apartment building approximately 10 feet from the northern property line to preserve rock outcropping located at the southern side of Rebel Ridge Apartments, to work with staff during construction plan process to address drainage and sediment issues. The board talked about drainage quite a bit. There is a drainage report that was presented to them. And to save approximately 32.02 acres of hillside as open space by dedication to the city of St. George. So if I may, I'm almost there. All of this parcel here, it's recommended and proposed by the applicant to save that and not be developed, and they'd like the council, the city, to entertain considering accepting that as a donation, and then the city, if the city expresses interest, would keep that and not allow any development in the future and protect these hillsides where I'm pointing with the arrow. And most of you, I'm sure, have looked out there. You've got some good, interesting natural features, the rock outcropping there at the top. And all of it is in your packet. It shows the contour map. This is all very steep, very over 40%, and couldn't couldn't be developed. So I'm going to look at page 4, additional comments. The Hillside Board clarified that the areas requested to be removed would only qualify as isolated or insignificant when considered along with the adjacent 32 acres of hillside, and that's what's shown on the screen in red now. The size of the subject area is 6.84 acres, which again would be right in here. By itself, it would not be considered as isolated or insignificant, but the possibility of being granted a transfer density for the area comes from the protection of the overall hillside. Applicant has offered to dedicate the approximate 32.02 acres of remaining hillside to the city. This would protect the ridgeline and its rock outcroppings and prevent further development on the remaining property. The Hillside Board discussed at length any potential rockfall hazards, but felt a rockfall study was not required in this particular circumstance due to the project's distance from any potential runout. And finally, to conclude my comments, the Planning Commission recommends approval after considering the comments received from the Hillside Board, comments from staff and the applicant's representative and the applicant himself. And they recommend the motion. It's recommended to approve the removal of isolated insignificant slopes on approximately 6.84 acres as presented on the contour map per section 1013A5B3 to locate proposed apartment building approximately 10 feet from the north property line, to preserve rock outcropping located at the southern side of Rebel Ridge Apartments, and I'll try to show where that is in one moment, to work with staff during construction plan to process, to address drainage and sediment issues, to save approximately 32.02 acres of hillside as open space by dedication to the City of St. George, to protect it as open space and offered by the applicant. It would be approval is subject to legal department review. A donation agreement as offered by the applicant is subject to review by Development Services and Legal Department. And the applicant requests that acceptance of the donation of land come with a stipulation by the city that no future development occur on the approximate 32.02 acres. Right where I'm pointing here, there's a little rock outcropping. Personally, I didn't think it was really attractive, but they're wanting to go from this property line and go 10 feet back and start the building, and then they'll be addressing some drainage issues in here, and that's why that was mentioned in there if I didn't clarify it. I think I've covered everything I need to, and that concludes staff's comments.
Any questions?
So approving this, we approve the donation agreement as well?
No.
Then I have a question about that.
No.
If,
It was made clear on site that two are separate.
okay, okay, then I guess I
Paula?
don't have a question.
Anything else, Paula?
Here, I'll just ask, do we want that property? I mean, what's our liability when a rock comes off of there? I know that never happens along that stretch in there, but
Well, it's a little hard to say right now as we have a lawsuit on a situation like that. So, I mean, obviously our position is we don't have any liability for that. As long as we haven't altered it or changed it or added things to it in any way. So, I mean, that's our position in that. If you want to consider, I mean, they are two separate parcels, so if you want to consider them together, you certainly can do that. But you don't have to. Our ordinance, it's really the parcel they're building on that you're supposed to consider and decide whether or not the hillside applies and the percentages.
but that was part of the planning commission recommendation was the donation agreement, correct? Am I?
Should that,
Yeah.
and is that okay to be in one, motion? Or should that be a
I
separate?
think it has to be a separate
I do
item,
too.
simply the reason that
Yeah.
they're gonna take a tax credit for it, and they're gonna have an appraisal, and I think that in the past, we've required a separate resolution or
Let's do
whatever.
that later.
To accept that, but I don't think
Right.
you wouldn't wanna consider processing any further development, as it comes forward for zone change or whatever it needs to have, a development permit, without having that in place, one way or another. Now, in the past, we have accepted most of this hillsides, even though we understand that somebody may suggest that there might be a liability, but I agree with what Paul is saying, that unless we do something to alter the land, our position is we don't. And sometimes we're better off controlling it ourselves rather than letting somebody else get up on it so we have a little better control of it. But there's always going to be a potential liability.
Unless we don't own it, then.
Well, if we don't own it, you know,
They may
are we
still say-
are we
They
protecting
don't
the
have to
people
try to
down
sue us.
below or whatever, you know? They could put in
Yeah.
they could put in a 501c3 or something like that, I guess, but we own all the property to the north of it, so I don't think that it would be, in this particular case, it'd be useful to let somebody else own it. I think we should own it, but that's just personal opinion.
So if there's no other discussion, I would make a motion and to make those separate by making the motion that we approve the recommendations of the Hillside Review Board to remove the isolated and insignificant slopes on approximately 6.84 acres as presented, but that we do not include the donation agreement.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy and a second by Betty. Any discussion or clarifications?
You may want to clarify in your motion that you're granting that based on the fact that that other property is being considered as the percentages that makes it okay to give that.
Right, because that was only
Variance.
considered insignificant if you had
If you
that.
added the other properties
So
in.
I would amend my motion to include that.
Approved, yeah,
Okay.
second.
So again, we have a motion by Jimmy, second by Betty. And does the city recorder have that change in the motion? Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
On site, and I think it serves us all well to have Paula review one of the issues that came up here, because the expertise on the Hillside Board includes engineers, soil techs, architects, certainly geologists, and from time to time, because we're drawing from the expertise and strength of those who are familiar with these issues from the public, that they're also still in business. So I'm a non-voting member, Hillside. I'm mostly a representative of the mayor, so that we can make sure things are, done in order, and that I can report back, having had, eyes and feet on the ground, so to speak. But because of that, one of the members needed to clarify what their status might be for voting. So even though we often get that question of us here, and it needs to be clarified, I did my best in the field. But for those who sometimes don't understand that part or that role, Paula, could you take a minute and explain for all the boards we serve on, as well as those members of those boards that the mayor has appointed, that they understand what is the parameters of their voting and contracts and things like that?
Well, and I think it's important to remember that whether it's on a committee or the planning commission or the city council, you may have conflicts of interest. And so a conflict of interest would be that you actually had some kind of ownership interest or contractual interest in the property or the project that you're dealing with. And so then you would have some maybe financial gain by whatever the outcome or decision is. Under the state law, all you're required to do is declare your conflict. It doesn't say that you actually have to remove yourself. But my experience is that anyone who has a conflict always chooses to recuse themselves. They usually step down. They don't participate in the voting of whatever that issue may be. But frankly, state law does not require that. So, but you do have to declare it so everyone knows what your interest is. You're not hiding it from the public or from, the parties that are involved in it, so everyone knows.
Right, and the one representative there actually was under contract to help provide some information to this applicant, and did the right thing. Recused, did not participate, and was able to turn, basically away
Right.
from the discussion.
You know, and we've had that situation where, for example, Kim Campbell has been representing somebody as an architect, and so he hasn't participated when he was handling planning commission issues and presented cases, but he did not participate in the discussion or anything on that particular issue to avoid that conflict.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the planning commission.
I just want to clarify one thing on that last item. The applicant does have a building design conceptual site plan and a CUP coming soon. I'm assuming that other piece, the donation and so forth, won't hold that up as he comes forward with the rest.
That's a very simple action item by the council that just requires them to know what they're accepting. Like, you know, Councilman Hughes has indicated, if the council felt like that it wasn't, we were taking on liability that we didn't think was worth the taking the property, the risk-reward situation, that's why it should be considered separate, but it just needs to be listed on, there's no advertising period other than
Right,
just
just
be
our
on a
normal
agenda,
agenda
so it can
item.
move as fast as
Next week.
right, it can
And
move
we-
as fast as the other.
We typically do a donation agreement with that, so they have the documentation so that if they're doing the tax credit, which they usually are going to do, they have that.
So they need to get that resolved before they,
No, we
No.
just need to place it on the agenda,
But-
the next agenda.
okay. Because one of the items, when we did meet with him originally, we talked about them donating it, and they said, well, maybe, but they also said, well, if not, we'd entered into an agreement where we would, a development agreement where we would say that that property is undevelopable if we keep
Well,
it.
you can put a conservation easement on it forever too. if that-
Exactly.
That could be that's their choice, but, normally they want to deed it so that they can take a
Right, a
tax
tax
reduction in their, and then they have to do an appraisal, so that's up to them, however they want to handle it, and then we'd have to make a decision whether we want to accept the liability or the ownership of that property.
So we could bring that forward with both those other two items.
Yeah, you could bring it
Next
as
week
soon
if
as you
you
want
had
to
to.
bring it.
Okay, because I know they're coming.
We're actually
Anytime.
going to make next week, I think, a regular meeting for a few items we need, so we could consider it as soon as next week.
Okay, item 3 from the Planning Commission report is a request to approve a preliminary plat for a 60-lot residential subdivision called the Villas at Cottom Ridge. Location is River Road in 1850 South. Property is 8.55 acres for a density of 7 dwelling units per acre. The zone is PDR. General plan shows this is MDR. The applicant is Wright Homes. The representative tonight is Brandy Walker. This preliminary plat is right here. A couple of the items that staff looked at that, first of all, this is their main access off of River Road. And so they have a secondary access right here. As we reviewed this originally, they proposed only doing the south half of that access up, and I can't remember, maybe 25, 27 feet of asphalt here, and not finishing the north half. Staff requested that they do the whole access at least up to here, as we felt like Howard, I think it's Howard Cottom, would probably never finish that road as it serves him. However, the representatives indicated that this little piece of property right here is actually owned by all 3 siblings in this family, and the agreement is they can only do that portion and not that north half. And so that, again, would probably then only be a finished second access if and when this person ever developed there. It would be, you'd have just curb and gutter and pavement on that south side. The other thing is, this is River Road. These will be double fronting lots here. So we'll have the 6-foot privacy wall and the landscape strip. The difference in this one is they do have an HOA, so they will maintain the landscape strip. It wouldn't go to the city. They do have an amenity area here that will be part of their development, and then they'll landscape these areas in here. Their drainage will come back here through these 2 units, and then it'll come to here in a pipe. Then they want to just put it into an open ditch all the way through here. They can improve this piece here because, again, that's not their property. That's their Howard's property. And so they'll have to end their ditch here and just allow it to do whatever it does now. And then there is an existing storm drain line right there. Again, another issue staff looked at was this native vegetative area here. If you look on your 3rd sheet, their proposal is to run some irrigation lines in there and to irrigate the vegetation that's back there now and to remove the dead vegetation that's there now. I did take Mark and Jeff from Parks out there with me just to kind of get an idea. So I just want to show you some pictures. So we climbed down in there. So I might need some workman's comp or something because it was scary. So anyway, so we climbed down in there. I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures because we've been grappling with this on how to deal with this. So this is a picture inside there. There is, right here is the drainage ditch that will be used to drain that water up to that northwesterly end. And then this is just a picture.
Is it pretty steep all over in there? Pretty steep slope?
You know, as we climbed down in there, yeah, it was pretty dang steep. And, yeah, I kind of fell. So, yeah, it was pretty steep. Mark seemed a little more sure-footed. And then there's some trees. There's some tamarisk. There's some ash. There's, I don't know, all kinds of trees. Anyways, so there was, and I just kind of wanted to show you a couple pictures down in there. It's like you're a world away when you're down in there. Little fort somebody built. And then this is kind of looking from outside of it. Just kind of give you some perspective as far as, you know, what's there. This is that wall there on that westerly side. And then this is the culvert right at the end here where that drainage will go. So their proposal again is to just go in and remove the dead vegetation. There is a lot of undergrowth in there that has died. If you go back to this, I'm not very good at this. Let me see if I can find that. Right there's a bunch of dead undergrowth. So, you know, I guess the concern staff has, and I'm not sure I have the best answer, is you're turning it over to an HOA who then becomes responsible to own and maintain this. You know, I guess the concern we have is to leave it in a condition that is manageable, that an HOA has enough, you know, funds to be able to manage this, you know, on a constant basis and what that is.
But
it is more than going in and mowing it. It is, and
but at the same time, they could say we're going to do nothing there.
you could say that and say we're just going to leave it.
It's a fire risk. Those that back up to it from Eagles Landing have often been worried. We've cleaned stuff out of there that overhangs some of their homes, backyards rather. So I think it's noble that they're going to clean it up, and maybe irrigating those trees would make them more healthy and allow the, you know, underbrush. It really just has never been cleaned out. And so if it were one time, I think they could get back in there easy enough to continue it.
Go ahead.
Is there no way to make it accessible?
Well, that's one thing we looked at too, and we'll have to look and find a way for them. Right now, I'm not sure, maybe right here would be the way to get in there. That's something we'll have to address as we go through that. But you would need to provide access in there because it will need to be maintained.
You can get in there real easy. You
Just can't get out. You just can't get out.
Well, I still think between units 8 and 9,
Right here.
there's potential, yeah.
Yeah, and that's something we would look at on the construction drawings as far as that goes. And that's something Mark and Jeff talked about is, you know, we looked at 3 options, just tearing the whole thing out and starting over. That would get costly. And so and then we looked at maybe doing what they thought about and maybe just going in and tearing out the undergrowth and the dead trees and at least leaving it in that condition. Or your other option, like you said, is just don't do anything.
I think we need to, it's preliminary plat, but I think when we do the final plat, we need to have a little bit of a plan on how they're going to get down in there and how they're going to maintain it. Because if they leave it without an access down there, then the HOA is never going to maintain it. And, you know, I think that it's a nice amenity, really, if it was done so that you could get a trail or something down in there to kind of open it up. Because the more it's congested and not access, and the more undesirable things that could happen down there, out of sight, out of mind, and especially the fire hazard. So I think we need to hold pretty firm that before the developer turns it over, that it's done to some standard that the city would have to inspect it or something with our landscape architects or what, to see that we clear out some of that stuff. You could clear some of the tamaracks out and some of the, and unclutter it a little bit and get the dead fill out,
Yep.
and it might be a nice
Actually a
little
nice area.
Yeah, I'm thinking if there was a trail in there and a picnic table, that's all you needed.
Right.
Be kind of cool.
Kind of looks
It
like
really would.
where the Sunset Apartments are, and then it kind of backs into the halfway wash area. When that was first developed, it looked like that. And then they cleaned it all out, left the trees.
Yeah, it's really
Now
nice.
everyone kind of uses it, and they have put tables down there.
And I, as I was there, I met with some of the Eaglewood, or whatever that is, that subdivision, and I think they do like the trees, they like the buffer.
Yep.
I think their concern is just the overgrowth and that it's not in a manageable state right now.
And you can't do that unless you got a way to get in and a way to get
Yep.
some out. So we've got to look at that before they do the final plat.
I had another question on it. If you drain down there through that area you're talking about, you're coming to that part of it that's not part of this project, but is owned by Howard. I thought we talked about a written agreement that they could run that water across his property.
Well, I think right now, the water already drains there, and you would be allowed, Paula, correct me where I'm wrong, is to allow what has drained there, but you would have to probably do some type of detention in this area here to not release.
And that's not my question. My question is, you've got to have some kind of an agreement with Howard that that easement will be through there to run the water through there.
Well,
And
I
I don't
think,
think we have that.
well, I think we have a prescriptive easement on the property. Is that not correct? Not us, but somebody does.
If we
Property
don't
owner.
change it,
Right.
then yes. But if you make it into a ditch, like they're going to change it and put in some kind of ditch that's not there, and so you're directing it into a certain point,
See, that
there could be
bothers
some
me.
problems with that.
But where there's a culvert already in there
But the
established.
culvert is across that property that Howard owns.
On the other side. Is there already a ditch?
There's already a ditch
then-
there.
There is a ditch, it's filled in, yeah, there is.
Because he's always complained about the city, he wanted the city to come in and maintain that because it's always been a tailwater
Right.
ditch as the water come off the farms. It went down there and collected there and then went into that ditch. And I think we installed some of that drainage in there because of the potential problem of the stuff just growing and not being able to get, it got choked up. And in fact, the Cottoms asked the city to come in and clean it out
Yeah.
at
So
one time.
we're
so-
just cleaning the ditch, not doing a new ditch.
Are we safe doing that?
Well, I mean, we'll look at those issues, but this is a preliminary plat for the layout. You're not approving the ditch, you're not approving the drainage or any of those issues. They're just things
We
that
still
we're gonna
have
have to
time.
work out
Perfect.
before it gets finalized.
Perfect.
Plus, Wes, doesn't all the road work in there and all the homes have to drain to the roads and the road has to drain to River Road, right?
No, all the drainage will drain back to that back piece.
And will that include everything that's along the frontage as well? Of River
So
Road?
all of this interior here will drain back to some inlets here and then will be piped to here. Really, the only piece that may drain out to River Road is this and this right here,
Okay.
just because of the lay of the land.
Okay. So, still a fair bit, but we can resolve before we get to final plat. Good work, okay. Okay, council, I think good discussion, probably ready for a motion though, if you are.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for the villa at Cottom Ridge.
Second.
Motion by Jimmy and a second by Betty. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, item 4 from the Planning Commission report, above Paula, was actually tabled by the applicant. They needed to resolve a couple items before they bring that back. So item 5 is a request to approve a lot split called the Lion Ryan Lot Split. Representative Scott Woolsey at Alpha Engineering. The property is located between 389 North and 477 North Industrial Road. Zone is M1. The lot split will divide the property approximately down the middle, leaving a parcel to the north about 8.8 acres and a parcel to the south 0.95 acres. All aspects of this lot split were looked by staff and it meets the conditions. And this is right here. And basically, gosh, those lines are so faded. Basically, they're gonna just split the lot. It's easier to see on that second sheet where you have the aerial behind it. They're just gonna split it right in half and create 2 lots out of it so that they can sell the 2 lots.
Any questions?
Motion to approve the final plat amendment to split the lot.
Okay, motion by Jimmy to approve this lot split. Second was that you, Michelle? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And that was it for Planning Commission, other than the other business that's listed, so we can read that and may see some things coming in the future there. Okay. Let's see, I believe that takes us to 6B. You stayed here all this time for this, Matt?
I did.
What a man.
Mayor, council members, this one's kind of a unique situation on things that I've kind of been accustomed to with dealing with excess city property. This was kind of a 20-year-old issue, according to the current homeowner. And he was the one that brought this forth. Normally, if we see property that someone maybe has encroached on, we usually either run across it, or code enforcement runs across it, or development runs across it. But I'm not sure why Mr. Anderson has brought it forward, but I think he just wants to make it right, if that's the approach. But just quickly, I think I put a packet on each of your desks with some pictures. The first couple pictures is the color of his home, and then just an aerial shot of the 5,919 square feet that he's looking to either purchase or consider an exchange with the drainage system that he has installed out of his own pocket. You will see on the other pictures, right after his home, the hillside has a little slope, which is kind of a natural slope for water to drain down through the valleys. And basically what happened at that point, it drains into his property and the property next to him, as well as the property across the street that you'll see further on. The walls that you see there is the exact system that he's installed, that he's mentioned in the last page, as far as what he's installed to try and mitigate the drainage there. And each of the wall has a drainage pipe that is directed to the 16-inch drain that goes out and daylights onto the road. And then the next couple of pictures is just some of the stuff that happened in the past that showed some of the mud and debris that came off of the hillside. So I think this evening is kind of your consideration on where to go with this, recognizing that he has spent a good share. And I think in the past, and more so currently, or most recently, I think we've been at about $1.50, $1.50 a square foot of some of the most recent city property that we've deemed excess and been able to sell to the property owner.
That's a pretty extensive set of walls he's put in
Yeah.
to try to help kind of mitigate the issue.
I have a comment or two on that. In a normal situation, the city of St. George would be responsible to take care of that runoff water. Is that not
I
true?
think we had a discussion earlier.
I
We
haven't
didn't-
heard that discussion.
Well, no. The last one, if we
No.
didn't touch it or
No,
it.
exactly. No, we would not be responsible for the runoff. It's natural. Nature took its course, and so we're not responsible for it. It's not something that we put in and didn't work right. It's just natural status.
So in other words, we may not be legally responsible,
That's right.
correct.
maybe
Correct.
morally.
Well,
No, not even morally.
Well, I think that,
Or you'd be paying for a lot of these.
Your morals are different than mine, Joe.
I think that the issue in my mind would be that when the building was built, obviously then it'd be the homeowner's obligation to protect himself.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think, though, that the city could recognize that he's done a service for some of the other people in the area by discounting maybe the price down to $1 rather than $1.50 or $2. We've got some we've sold for $2. And so if you wanted to say, we think it's worth this, then we'll discount because he has done some work to protect others besides himself. But we have no obligation legally to protect those homeowners with that, because otherwise we'd be building these things all the way. Every hillside in the entire town would have the same issue, and we've been very clear with people who filed claims or whatever else. It's not our responsibility, but we could recognize that he has benefited the city by doing something and discount the property a little bit. That's would be my recommendation
Right.
that we say.
And in addition, it would be saving the city money for having to go out and clean up the roadway because it
Right.
impacted our property coming in like that, as well as the neighbor's property. So it would be fair to give some consideration for that.
And just again, by note, currently, when a new development is being built, all these things are somewhat resolved. This one, he bought the home, moved into the home, and then realized, okay, when it rains, he's got
Yeah.
some challenges.
It was probably even before the city owned that property.
Could have been too, that's right.
Yeah, it's been
It was
Probably.
terrible.
20-plus
Well,
years.
does he want to buy it?
He's just presenting we're just presenting the options and see if there's, like, city manager mentioned, if there's some consideration of what he's done so far
So has
versus what
he offered to buy it? Or did he want to buy it, or
he
does
just
he?
wants to make it right.
Okay.
Because he's got walls there now that's on our property.
yeah, he's
and He
encroached
just come forward and just wants to
on
make it
about
right.
5,900 square feet, is that right?
Yeah, 59, 19 or something like
Yeah.
that.
In light of Mr. Anderson's spending over $14,000 on trying to control the drainage, I would make a motion that we accept that as trade and go ahead and sell the property to him for the discounted price of $1 per square foot.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Jimmy and a second by Gil. Any discussion? Paula, did you have anything?
Well, we don't actually have a purchase agreement in front of you,
Yeah.
but we can certainly get that ready and bring it back to you with all the terms that you think are appropriate to put in that, so that, and also make sure he's agreeable to those terms and bring that back to you, if that's the direction you want us to do.
So to amend that motion to make the offer to Mr. Anderson to purchase the property for $1 a square foot.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I wish it was 50 cents a square foot.
I'm with Joe.
If wishes were fishes, we'd all have our fry.
Oh.
Well, we'll see what Mr. Anderson
Well,
says.
he can make a counteroffer.
Yep. Okay, so any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Could you repeat how that goes out right now? How that motion was?
I think it's what we're basically saying is we're willing to talk to Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
and say the council's recognizes you've done this. We're willing to sell you the property for $1, and then we bring back to you a purchase agreement. Now, if he says, no, I'm not willing to say that, I'm willing to pay this much, then you could entertain that as part of the purchase contract. But I think all we're really saying is that we're willing to discount the property down because of the improvements it made and what's there, and we want to sell it to him if he's willing to take it.
Correct.
Is it $1 a square foot or just $1?
Well, that's what I
$1 a
think
square foot.
that would be what you'd be voting on. It's $1 a square foot.
So
Yeah.
$5,900
That's what Jimmy's motion said.
for 5,900 square feet of property, which probably isn't, it's on the hillside, so.
So
It is a big chunk of property.
it's.
Typically, we're not doing that much.
But I think it's the precedent you've got to look at because you've done it all over the city, whether it's usable or not usable property. We've always said it's somewhere between this and that amount. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be subject to some negotiations if he doesn't feel he wants to pay that, but that's where we'd have to start, I
Right.
guess.
So that's why, so I'll clarify my motion in light of the fact that Mr. Anderson has spent over $14,000 controlling the flood, that we would make an offer or give him the opportunity to purchase the property for $1 per square foot.
Second.
Is that better?
Okay, did you second the prior motion? Okay, so we've got a motion, an amended motion.
Yeah,
by-
amended.
By Jimmy and a second by Gil. Again, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
No.
Okay, the motion carries 3-2.
I'm in favor of making that work out. I just think that dollar's too high.
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing that we get it handled one way or another, though.
So, Matt, will you contact, okay,
And then I'll work with legal and get that
okay,
figured out.
okay.
Thank
Thank you. And I would say thank Mr. Anderson for bringing this to our attention. Okay, all righty.
I think that's it, Mayor, except for the appointments, if you have any.
I don't have any appointments, but we do have minutes. Any need for a closed meeting, Gary?
I don't have any items. I don't know if legal.
Paula?
Ta-da.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so let's go to minutes, and then if there are any reports from anyone, we can do that. So minutes,
Move for the approval of the March 26, 2015 minutes.
Second.
motion by Gil, second by Jimmy. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Move to have Betty make the next motion.
Just have to jump in there. I would like to move that we approve the minutes from the meeting held April 2nd, 2015.
Second.
Motion by Betty, second by Gil. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Move to
Paula,
adjourn.
wait a sec.
We do have one other issue that we needed to discuss, and that's on the voting for the
Oh,
polling
good.
centers. I think you had the
Yes.
information on that.
Well, I don't have it with me,
We
but
can't vote on it because
Yeah.
it's not on the agenda,
Yeah.
but get some discussion because Christina does need to get with them and let them know.
so let me explain. There will be I don't know what they call it. Do they call it they don't really call it a primary election, but there will be a election on August 11th? Yeah, okay, it's primary election. If there are more than 6 candidates for the 3 seats that will be up in this year. So we've had some issues as Christina's been trying to get schools lined up for those, especially for the primary election. It's back to school night, it's, they just have had a number of problems. So we're wondering about going to, basically, it's another allowed way to do this, and that is to, instead of using all the schools we've maybe used in the past, we may still use some schools, but we would use fewer places, but have them, regionally, geographically located so that people still had good access. Maybe there may be some more poll workers there, but it would actually utilize in total fewer poll workers. And we would just kind of suggest, as Christina's gone over this with Gary and me and with legal, we would suggest that maybe we consider doing that. It would save some considerable money. Do you remember about how much? It's about half what we currently spend. What do we spend about? Yeah. So if you're interested in trying this, we have some school principals who are just delighted to have us there, to have the elections there, and others who say it's just really hard, with events or whatever. And keep in mind that is a school day, and so you have voting going on while kids are in school. So it can be problematic. So we would be doing this. Yeah, you do. I mean, it's just though if there are some schools that don't want to do it or can't do it, we'll say great. We'll use another location. Like, what are some of the locations? Yep. Yep.
So how do people know when they're used to going to a certain place? How do they know?
That's my only concern.
We would advertise it.
Don't we already have something like that for some districts?
Yes, well, we
Like
have
at the
done.
Dixie Center?
Yes.
So I know I voted at the Dixie Center, but I live over in Green Valley.
Yep.
Used to vote somewhere else. Right.
So it's, you know,
Actually makes it easier on one hand, but.
For working
not as-
people and-
Yeah, if you're
yeah.
downtown working, you just go into where
What
the
about-
nearest one's at.
For example, what about like Bloomington Hills Elementary? If that's closed to our use, then what about the county's maintenance building has a nice entry and a meeting area, and it's 100 yards away.
I mean, it's an option. We could, you know,
With
she could
parking.
contact him.
With parking.
So and do we need this to be in a formal approval
We will need to actually
Okay.
have a vote on it, so we could put it on for the next.
next week?
Mhm.
What do you think? We're not necessarily trying to push one way or the other. We will have some issues. There are some schools that have told us no. So we're going to have some changes anyway. It's just whether we go to this, you know, more modified than what it's going to be modified.
Yeah. I guess the people that want to vote will figure it out.
Exactly.
And it's nice to save money, but it is, you know, you hate to give people a reason not to. It's such a low participation anyways.
Yeah.
But saving money.
I think, you know, I mean, website, you know, Facebook, county, yeah.
It'll only take a year
Yeah.
or two times you vote or whatever before you know, like now. I used
So
to
are we
vote
saying,
there,
are
so
we
go
saying
down.
to maintain that through all
Well, I
of
think
our-
you should personally, because I think
then-
once you establish it, you say here are the, and it's
Perfect.
easier for me, for people that
We
could
ought to
vote
consider
down
that.
here rather than having to drive clear out there. So there's pluses, as many pluses as there are minuses when you get to that standpoint. Once you know what the process is, and
Yeah.
I like trying new things.
Yeah.
And if it's
Every
not just
now
a
and then.
one-time thing, then
Right.
yeah, we ought to look
We
at
could
it.
just stick with it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we could add some or take some off if, you know, we find utilization isn't as high. We looked at the Senior Citizen Center, for example, actually has pretty good utilization, so we'd probably still use that, you know, so there's some that still would be used. Yeah. At the hall or at the senior center? Voters?
You mean voters or, oh,
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Yep. Okay. Well, we'll bring that, let's put that on the agenda if we need to for next week then. But Christina, you could probably at least start moving towards that. Okay. Or no, you don't have to come up with a bunch of others at least. Okay. Any reports from anyone? Meetings?
We covered mine in the vote.
Betty and I, I'll just mention, we went to DTEC, you know, MPO, yesterday. Seems longer.
I know.
And the one thing that they mentioned that I'd like to tee up, and that is, you know, this local option transportation tax, 362. We talked significantly about that, and if we are interested in, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but if we're interested in getting that on the ballot for this year, it would be good, we think, to get that, you know, to put a resolution. The county wants us to do a resolution, and the league has actually prepared one that could be used that says, you know, here's why we support this. So what we need to do is, and I'm not trying, we don't need a decision today, it would need to be put on an agenda, and I would suggest we do that probably you know, I don't know who's going to be here, but probably the third Thursday in June, because we're gonna cancel the second Thursday meeting. Wasn't that the 11th, Gary? That was a work meeting. We're going to cancel that. Is that the right day?
of June?
It's the 11th, okay. So would you be in favor of at least bringing that resolution so that we could vote on it and discuss, and that would be, obviously public, to determine whether we support going forward with that, with a recommendation to the county to put that on the ballot for this November? Are you in favor of doing that?
No.
Jimmy's not? It's okay.
I just felt like the legislature should do their job
Well, and that's,
instead of putting it back on us.
well, and that's true, but they did maybe half their job.
Yeah, I was going to say they passed something.
It was a compromise. They did, and that was one of the concerns, and Jimmy, because you were at the previous meeting, but one of the concerns is we went asking, really the league went hard asking the legislature to pass this, and it was tough to get what they got passed. They passed it, I don't know, at about 11:45 or something p.m. on the last night. And so now if we kind of come back and say, yeah, we know we want it, we asked for it, and you passed it, albeit not perfect, and now we're going to put it off for a year or two, it just seems a little bit disingenuous. So at least it seems like maybe something we ought to put before the voters, highlight what this would mean. And I think Cameron, he was at this meeting, we would need him, Gary, to list out what this would mean. What things would we do that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do? It might even come down to some of this chip and seal versus the microsurface.
The cry about the chip and seal, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Stereotypically, people complain about their city roads. There's potholes, there's this and that, and it takes money.
It does.
So this is something that they really will want.
So anyway, I don't mind how we, vote on it, but it seems like we ought to have the public discussion and consider that resolution if you're, so inclined.
Yeah, we need to talk about the other ramifications too, is if all counties don't pass it, how that works.
And we talked about that a little bit as well. We think that really when you look at that, even say worst case scenario, Iron County,
Right.
didn't pass it. Would that really change their purchasing decisions? I think what's going to make the difference, even with automobiles, are they going to go to Cedar City to buy their automobiles? Well, if they're talking about maybe a $75 savings, it's not going to be much. And if it's even that much, you're talking gas, maybe a couple trips. Are they really going to do that, or is the price of the car going to be, the negotiating that normally goes on going to make up even for some of that? That's about the biggest ticket item we could think of. And certainly all of your grocery stores, you're not going to go to, Cedar City to shop.
But what about how the funds are allocated then after? Because they're only allocated to those that opt in, correct?
Well, yeah, and it'd be by county.
But some of what comes from our county would go to all the other counties that opt in.
Not on this.
No.
Yep.
Okay.
That was why this worked.
That it is. It's your
Yeah, I
road.
couldn't remember on that.
your
whether it
money.
was-
No, that's a good
That's
point.
it's 1% or
Yeah,
1/10 goes to, and 1/10 to the transit, and then 5.05 to the county.
But ultimately, it'll be.
And there's the transit too.
0.1 for transit, 0.1 for your roads,
Yeah.
and then 0.05. So
For
you're
the
talking
county.
about like
0.25.
0.1's not really. That's should be what, one.
Yeah.
No, it's more. I'm thinking out your 2.5 cents is. That's 0.1 is not 0.1 of that. I mean, it's a percentage. It's like what 0.1 is of 2.5, or 1 is of 2.5. What's that?
And ultimately, the county.
60, 30.
I'd love to see him
40%
do
or
that in his
something like
head.
Yeah. Ultimately, the county will have to. It'll go to the voters, and the
Yep.
county will have to enact it. Not necessarily each city of the county.
Has to pass countywide.
That's correct.
If it doesn't pass countywide, then
It's not just a
it's
city;
not
it's a
gonna
county.
That's correct.
Yeah, well, we ought to discuss it and get after it.
They tried to make it work.
That's right.
And as this went to the mayor's council as well, and a clear majority, if I don't even know if there were any that were against it, said, you know, they felt like we ought to bring it up. We ought to take it to our councils, and, you know, this is just the mayor's, but they said we ought to take it to our councils, let them decide if we pass the resolution, and if we do, yeah, get it on the ballot. And the county's not going to do it until they have that. And I understand that.
Do we have a feel for what other counties are doing?
It's looking like Salt Lake City is now supporting this, which means Salt Lake County will, is what the word on the street is. I don't want to, but I've heard that Mayor Becker has supported it, and so therefore I think Mayor McAdams will, of the county. And there are a number of counties, Jimmy, to your point, that we're saying we're going to do it when Salt Lake County does. So I think you're going to see a number of counties want to do it. And we had a report at this meeting saying most counties were leaning that way.
Utah County was
They
kind of didn't know what they were going to do, but everybody else, Davis.
Weber, yeah. And all the smaller ones. So to me, it probably makes sense to go forward. The other thing is, this is not like the RAP tax, in that if it were to fail, you could put it on the ballot again next year if you chose to. So RAP tax, you'd have to wait 2 years.
They think the low gasoline prices and just the desire, the leagues put a lot of money into this action, all of that would be helpful to get it done.
And again, you know, the way I look at it is, I'm sure probably similar to the rest of you, this is perfect because at least the voters get to vote on this. That's the only good thing of it, Jimmy, is there's a direct vote here as opposed to if the legislature just enacted it. So I think that's the good thing, and we can talk about transit because we are entitled to that, and we worked hard on that through the league.
That's another big issue that I forgot about.
Yeah.
There's a big deal.
There's a big
being
deal.
that we have a transit system,
Do we want to, because there's no way that I've been able to figure out with Gary's help that we can expand transit much more than we have it now, unless we have some additional dollars. So you're talking about either expanded routes, additional routes, or reduced times. We can't do both, I don't think, but we could probably do one or the other. And without this, I don't think we can do anything. So, anyway, good discussion.
I think it plays to your discussion on chip seal versus not chip seal, because, you know, there's reasons why we chip seal.
Yep.
Even though it's dirty and people don't like it until after it's all done, and they don't recognize it being done after 6 months from now or whatever. But if you're gonna go to another alternative, there's some issues that you have to look at, because some streets can't be chip sealed in their current situation, and you'd have to come in with a different type of an application, and those are all significantly more expensive. So if you have people that are not happy with what's there, none of us are happy, but it is the cheapest alternative. Now, if we want to go to the next alternative, you either reduce the amount of streets you do, or you increase the revenues available to pay for it, and maybe that's the argument. If they want to pay an extra little, whatever that would be of their portion of their budget, then you might go to the next step, and you might say, we're going to do all the same thing we did on River Road, but you can't do that without going back into some of your roads, because it doesn't work on previous certain types
If
of
they've
roads.
been
So
chip sealed already,
you can't do it.
you got to grind them down and start over before you can do the micro seal. So that's why I'm glad they did it this way on River Road, because, you know, it was a good test, and we can do it again if it works well in the longer term. But on 7th, we'd already chip sealed it before.
Yeah, from day one. That
From
was
day
always
one.
been a chip seal street. So anyway.
Very good discussion. Okay, any other reports from anything, Jimmy?
Animal shelter's doing well.
Good. Michelle?
Shade Tree Board needs 2 new members. Our last meeting, there was just
A couple people there.
me.
How'd the voting go?
Yeah, it was great. And so we need to kind of revitalize that a little, and I have a couple things to
Okay.
look at. And then,
Okay.
The Arts Commission has some names. I don't know if they should have been brought to you for our approval. But if they haven't, Alicia should have those because we have, I think there were like 3 or 4 new names.
It's possible she might have given to me, but I don't remember. So can you try to resurrect that for me?
Well, the meeting's Thursday, so
Okay.
next Thursday.
For you, actually, it's for any of you, but on Friday, May 29th at 2 p.m., there is the Veterans Home out in Ivans is placing a monument, an eagle monument. It will
Oh,
become the
this is it.
centerpiece at the Southern Utah Veterans Home. This magnificent bronze sculpture, towering over 20 feet high in height, will be nestled against the iconic Red Mountain that stands guard over the nursing home site. With its 10-foot wingspan, this inspiring symbol of America's freedom, for which the residents of this facility have fought, will serve as a permanent reminder of the sacrifices they've made and their importance to each of us as beneficiaries.
When
It's
is
gonna
that
be
again?
cool.
5/29,
5/29 at 2 o'clock.
2 p.m., and it's over there at the site, at the
Yeah,
Veterans
at the
Home.
Veterans Home.
And just to let
I'll
you,
send you an email.
just to let you know, the art museum is changing their display
Display.
From the wedding dresses to a Western display. And it was already previously arranged for Joe, and it just makes me sad that it's happening right now. But next year, we can make sure that we coincide, because it would have been really nice for the roundup. But please do stop by and comment on it, because they're all Western artists. Should be appealing to men after those wedding dresses.
One, yeah, the Commons.
Oh, is that,
It's,
that's going now?
Yeah, and I think Christina has something in it. Yeah. Also, I forgot and should have mentioned this, but tomorrow night, there's the first movie of the Town Square movies at 8-ish. And then, yeah, if it doesn't get rained out, which we have that happen once in a while, or blown away or something. And also, it's like the bike-in thing, if you're so inclined. That starts at 6. Any of you that want to come, I think we're going to serve hot dogs if they let us. I don't know what they let us do.
That was from the canceled event last.
Yes,
Yeah.
Monday.
Yep.
So if you want, I know it's the holiday weekend, but 6 p.m. until whenever, Town Square. And if you ride your bike in, even if you start a block or two away, they'll valet park your bike for you and watch it. Okay? If you have an expensive bike like I don't, but anyway. Anything else? Okay, ready for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Gil, second by Michelle. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.